Welcome to the Adoption and Fostering Podcast, a show for anyone who is interested in learning more about adoption and fostering. I'm your host, Al Coates, and I'm a social worker with over 10 years' experience in the field of adoption and fostering. In this podcast, I'll be talking to experts and families about all aspects of adoption and fostering, from the decision-making process to the day-to-day challenges and joys of raising a child who is adopted or fostered. I'll also be sharing some of my own personal experience as a social worker and as a parent of an adopted child. I hope this podcast will provide you... Are you still with me, Scott?
No, really not. When you get on to me in this?
Right, okay. Well, I hope this podcast will provide you with information and support you need to make an informed decision about adoption and fostering, or to simply learn more about this important topic. So whether you're thinking about adopting or fostering a child, or just curious about the process, I invite you to join me for the Adoption and Fostering Podcast. But yay! There you go. That was AI.
That
was amazing. It knows things about me.
Well, yes, it does. But what I would say is probably... Oh, by the way, I'm Scott Casson-Rennie too. Just in case anybody's new to this. And I'm
episode 167.
Yeah, episode 167, blah, blah, blah. That's fine if... I'm not being funny. Sorry, Americans, if you're listening, but that would be fine if you're a nice, bubbly American and you were doing a big old introduction with, blah, blah, blah. That's what their podcasts sound like. So it's clearly an AI thing from America, isn't it?
But it knows things about me,
Did it Google you? Did it Google you?
It must have Googled me. Because I said, write an introduction for the Adoption and Fostering Podcast, and it came up and it knew that I was a social worker and I've got over 10 years practice experience.
Well, whoop-de-doo.
Anyway, how are you, Scott?
Yes, I'm fine. Well, I was fine until I heard that old claptrap coming out your gob. But yeah, all good. Thank you, Al. Are you all right?
I'm all right. For the next episode, you ask it and see what it says about you.
Is this stuff free? Because you know what I'm like. If I have to pay for stuff like this, I'm not doing it.
No, it's free. It's called Google Bard. It's Google Bard I use, and it's really it's free.
Oh, you'll have to send me the link, and I'll do one.
Right. Okay. I'll send you the link.
And I'll do a bit more upbeat, so it's more interesting.
Excellent. So our adventure into AI is just at the very beginning. So next week we'll be doing it, and then you can retire back to your holiday. So in one sentence, how was your holiday?
It was lovely. There you go. There's one sentence. It
was lovely. I am a robot. Excellent.
Yeah. Well, we might as well. You've just done it.
Yeah. So. That was the worst start we've ever had.
Absolutely.
We're just going to crack on because we've got lots of news, but I think we should info, and I've got lots of things I want to talk to you, but not today because we've got two guests who are sat waiting with us, and we do, two wonderful guests. So today,
whose eyes have rolled back in their heads, and they're ready to log off now. Yeah,
they're seriously doubting their life choices, aren't they?
Their evening choices, anyway.
Their evening choices. So today with me, I have Rachael Stemp, who is a researcher from Hartford University, and I have Marie Crook, who is a foster carer. So hello,
Hi,
Rachael.
Thank you for having us.
Welcome both. You're welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm going to hand over to Scott because Scott has arranged it all. So I'm just his plaything.
Do you know what? I feel a little bit like Al's been taken over by an AI bot because the intro was just him, and then he said, "And today with me, I have Rachael Stemp and Am I not? Do I not exist anymore? Honestly, the AI is
not really,
which I kind of feel like that. But anyway, yes. So welcome both of you, and I guess just to kind of give a bit of background, I was contacted by an old friend who I know from years ago who has adopted children, and she has been working kind of closely with you, Rachael, I think.
Definitely. She works at the University of Hertfordshire with me. She's our trial manager. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So, and she contacted me just out of the blue on Facebook. I haven't talked to her for ages, actually. And so here we sit. And it's taken us a while to get to this stage. So, So do you want to just give a brief introduction of yourselves and what we're going to kind of discuss tonight?
Yeah, 100%. So I'm Rachael. I think, I already said that, but I'm Rachael Stemp.
A few times.
I work at the University of Hertfordshire at the moment. I'm a senior research assistant there. And I'm working on a big study at the moment called the Reflective Fostering Study. And I co-lead a project within that called Include, which is all about inclusivity and accessibility into research for foster carers.
Right. Okay.
Hello, hiya. My name's Marie. I'm a foster carer. Been fostering for 13 years. I had lots of children along the way. I have 3 children with me currently who are on permanent basis with myself. I did take part in the initial session for the reflective fostering, and I just felt it was the right kind of training for foster carers. Obviously, I've done lots and lots of training, and I just felt I really wanted to help with the research and encourage this to go forward for foster carers of the future and present. So,
okay. Oh, that's interesting. Thank you. So, Rachel, start by telling us a little bit about this, the kind of what Marie's just told us. That's some rubbish. Sorry, that's really rubbish.
Wow, that's really good, that, Scott.
No wonder I'm being pushed out the door, is it?
Yeah. What, the computers are coming.
Yeah. I meant include, because include is where the one that Marie mentioned there.
It
So
is
can you
the other
tell
way
us a little
around.
bit about
So
that? See, that's even worse. That's even worse.
Yeah, so Marie and I are both involved in the reflective fostering study. So Marie, as a carer, took part in the programme. So what it is we're doing this big study because we know that foster carers are absolutely fantastic, but my impression is that they give and give and give, and it's hard to make time for yourself and to put your own needs first. I think that's something that kind of comes very naturally when you're giving out a lot. You put children first. So reflective fostering is this new program which is based around this idea of mentalization. And to put it simply, mentalization is all about thinking about kind of where your own head is at, what your own headspace is, and kind of using that to also think about where the child that you're looking after, where their head's at as well, and kind of connecting on that level. So it's this program, reflective fostering program. We think it's fantastic. We think all carers should do it. But we also don't think it's enough just to say that. So we're doing this study, the reflective fostering study, to basically test out the program, to see what difference does it actually make in terms of carer wellbeing. Does it actually make a difference for children? Does it make a difference in terms of placement stability? So we're doing a big study. The aim is to get 720 carers involved. We've already got over 450, so we're well on the way. And it's set up as a piece of kind of really formal research. So it's called a randomized control trial, and it can be hard to get your head around, but it's often helpful to think of it in the medical way. So it's kind of like if you did a medical trial and some of you would take the drug and some of you would take the placebo. So half the carers, like Marie, go on the program, and then half don't. They just continue to receive their normal support.
Oh, okay.
And then people do questionnaires, and we use those questionnaires to tell the difference that the program's made, basically. But yeah, I mean, Marie is. I just sit and do the research side of things. Marie's the expert. She's the one who's been on the program.
Well, can I ask some questions about the reflective study? Because I mentioned before we started that we've both Scott and I have been a foster carer, as I endlessly tease him about him for about 35 seconds.
It was longer than that, can I just say? But
all right,
minutes,
I'll give you days, something like that.
It wasn't it wasn't many years like Marie, let's face it. No, and you weren't that long either. So
I was maybe 3 years, I think. I can't, it was a bit of a blur.
Wow.
And also I've worked in fostering. Shut up. And I was just curious about what the reflective study looks like, because I think that I read a bit of blurb about it. It's 10 2 hour sessions. What does that actually consist of? Because that's a big chunk of time, and getting foster carers to training, even at the best of times, dare I say, is not easy. Mm-hmm. Don't shoot me down. But that's my experience, and that's as a carer and as someone who's arranged this training. So what's the sell? How do you get people on, and what are you doing for those 10 weeks?
Well, for me, you're quite right. When I first went on a coffee morning with the reflective fostering people there, I thought, 10 weeks, 3 hours, can I really commit to this? And I was very apprehensive about it.
Yeah.
But I think for me, I've always been quite keen on my self-development in my role, whatever jobs I've done. And certainly in fostering, we come across so many challenges, and we're always looking for ways to become better foster carers, really, and strengthen those relationships. So I thought, right, I'm going to have a go, going to give it a go, and I went on. And the first session I just found, it was 3 hours, and it went very quickly, but I got such a lot out of that first session. We start off with mentalising, and there was about 8 people on the course, the programme, and it was all on Teams. So it was just at the very start when we were breaking out of COVID. So it was very nice as well to kind of communicate with these people. But I just felt it was very warm, it was very welcoming. I felt you could speak very openly. It was delivered by a foster carer who had a lot of experience and a supervising social worker. And it just felt right from the start, these understand us. These actually know the challenges that we're facing. They understand the things that we go through on a day-to-day basis, and we're all talking the same talk. It was very open in a way. There was lots of breakout rooms, and some of the foster carers had real complex challenges. And I felt mine was a challenge that was growing, but it wasn't as big as some. But there was no barriers to being open and talking about them. I just think every day after the session, I came away with something, with some new tool to work with. I think mentalising and self-reflection for me was a big one. And I use that every day. I went on this in June 22, I think. And I still use those. I wake up mentalising. And it was something that you probably do. And foster carers are very, like you said something before, we're very, we're in it because we're those type of people. So you kind of already have those skills. But for me, it really brought them to life. So it kind of, it offered me the support to self-reflect myself, also self-reflect for the child that I'm looking after, but be curious and do some real thinking. So when you're faced with a real challenge, it's given me that enablement to step back that little bit and think, well, go back to what you were taught on the sessions, self-reflect, think about what the child's feeling, what yourself feeling. Is it right now to manage this challenge, or do we walk away? And there's lots of other things along the way, and I don't want to give too much away, but I felt that I got that much from it. I couldn't wait for the next session. And then at the next session, you'd come away with something else. It was just very friendly, very warm, very welcoming. And I really wish, if this had came years ago, I might not have had all those challenges that I've faced, or I might have been able to deal with them that little bit better.
Yeah. Excellent.
So, I mean, some of that, some of it sounds like it's also that being held moment, isn't it? Where you're being facilitated to be able to be curious about yourself and all that sort of stuff, as well as, you called it mentalization, did you? Yeah. So is that part of it, or is it?
Well, say for the start of every session, we'd all do some mindfulness. So we'd think about where we are now at this time. So you'd start off, everyone would say, even the social worker, even the foster carer who was facilitating it. And you might have some real high pressures up there. So everyone knows where you are. And that just kind of at the start makes everyone understand each other and be more empathetic towards each other. So it just became really open from the very start. I've done lots of training over 13 years. We have mandatory training. We have training that you think your supervising social worker might recommend for you. We always go in and we understand trauma. We understand what all that does, all those life experiences do to a child in care. We come away armed with what's happening to the child. But I've never came away from a programme or a training session where I felt, but now I know how to deal with it. Now I feel a bit more, or a lot more confident in facing the challenge, in parenting it correctly, really, and in also understanding myself. Am I ready? Am I not ready? And for me, it strengthened the relationship because, the young person who I focused on, it was, a bit hectic at the time. And now it's just worked.
Can I ask where it's come from? Because I'm not, who's developed this program? Is there an underpinning that people would maybe kind of recognize or understand?
So I think this idea of mentalizing, like when we use that word, it can feel kind of a bit alien, but I think people are kind of more familiar with things like mindfulness, as Marie mentioned, or just this kind of idea of reflection and kind of reflecting on yourself. So that's kind of what it's based on. I mean, the lady who invented it, for want of a better word, Dr. Sheila Redfern. Originally, she kind of designed it for like all, not just fostering, but any form of parenting. And it was really kind of in response to this. There's a lot of parenting program out there for really young children, and a lot of parenting programs out there for teenagers, but kind of in the middle, there's this bit of a gap, and often parents can kind of be left thinking, what do I do all the time? So she developed it in response to that, kind of all around this idea of mental health and mental well-being. And then a few years ago, it kind of evolved into this thing that actually this would also be great for foster carers, and there's a few challenges for foster carers and circumstances that are different from if you're caring for birth children. So it was adapted slightly, but that's kind of where it came from. And Sheila is based at the Anna Freud in London, so that's kind of the origins there.
Right. I have to say, I have heard of a name, but I'm not going to Google it just now while we're talking. I will after. No, I mean, straight on.
Straight on. So, I mean, I can't sort of... I'm intrigued by the amount of time, because I know that I've put on training that's kind of been progressive over a few months, and it just is really hard to get people engaged. So was there a good, obviously, Marie, you loved it, obviously that's the reason you're here, you are like, you're passionate, got the t-shirt, everything. So was your experience reflected in your other attendees as well? Or did you get that impression?
We were fortunate that we were all local, so we were all from the West Lancashire area, all the people who attended the session. Didn't know each other before the session, we just maybe seen some in passing and support groups and stuff. But I made some real good friendships from it. We still have coffee mornings, so we call them a reflective fostering coffee morning, but we just get together for a coffee really. But the reflective fostering always comes up, so they still share stories about, I was having this situation the other day and you wouldn't believe what was going on. And I went right back to the reflective fostering and I picked out this tool and I used this tool and went with this method and it worked. So everyone was on board. There was 8 people on it, 8 people stayed to the end. And out of those 8 people, I think 6 of us still meet up quite regular. It's got very positive feedback from everyone. In fact, when I do some mentoring, and I do some of the projects where I work with birth families and adopted families who are at crisis point, I use a lot of the stuff that I've learned from that to pass on, and I get some really good feedback from the people who I'm working with. So it's just been so beneficial, really.
And I think that's not just your experience as well, Marie, because we often get messages from carers saying, oh, we now have a WhatsApp group for everyone in our thing, and a year later they're still WhatsApping each other, which is so lovely for us to hear, because as a research team, sometimes we don't get to see that nice side of it. So that's always really welcome. But and I don't have children. Oh, sorry, I forgot. So
I mean, no, sorry, Rachel. I was just going to ask how many groups have taken place so far?
The study started in 2020, which is a really inconvenient time to start anything in the middle of a pandemic. So the program started in 2021, and we've run so every term we start new sets of programs. So there's been 7 sets of programs, as it were. And it varies. So sometimes there might be 3 or 4 running in session. But we've had about 450 carers go through the study so far. And our next set, they're starting in September. So if anyone's listening and they want to join, then September will be the time.
Absolutely. And I'm assuming geographically it's all over the place rather than just
it's
specific areas.
All over England. We've got some Welsh carers as well. I mean, anyone from the UK is welcome to join. I don't think we've had anyone from Northern Ireland from memory at the moment, but so it's open across the UK. And because of the timing with COVID, most of the groups have been on Teams, and then some of them have been able to set up face-to-face. And some of them are local authority specific. So it might be that, if you're from Lancashire, for example, then Lancashire run their own group. But we also have mixed groups from across the country. So if your local authority isn't running a group, then you can join with carers from across the UK. And obviously they're on Teams because you don't want to travel 7 hours to join them.
Absolutely,
a really obvious question that in my head is there a cost to foster carers or local authorities?
No, none at all. I'm not sure if I'm actually allowed to say this on the podcast,
Right.
but there's actually a little bit of reimbursement to the local authorities. So the people who the research is funded by the National Institute for Health Research, and so there is some sort of thank you, I guess is probably the best way to put it, for local authorities, because it, obviously social workers, and as Marie said, it's run by a social worker and a foster carer. They put a lot of effort into running the program for us and getting trained up. So we do give a reimbursement.
Right, so you actually train facilitators from the local authority, or wherever the region, and then they do it, right? So that makes sense. So is that open to independent foster care agencies as well?
So local authorities and independent fostering agencies, we've got both of them in the study, and it used to be that you had to be from a local authority who was kind of partnered with the study, but just recently we changed it. So say you're from a local authority that isn't partnered with the study, you can still sign up directly to the study now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's a fascinating idea, because you're offering, even if the training is, regardless of what the training is, you're offering an awful lot of training for free in something that sounds like it's got obviously you're doing a study to find out if it has got like a longitudinal benefit, but already it's pretty clear that it has some benefit, but then that's your job, isn't it, to work out, to measure that benefit. So how do you measure the benefit of training?
I mean, well, perhaps Marie, you can say what it's like to do them, because I only see the data. But so carers fill in questionnaires. So when they sign up to the study, they complete a set of questionnaires, and then they either go on the program or they don't, depending on which group they're in, the control or they're not. And then they fill in questionnaires 4 months later, and then again 8 months later. So at the 12 months after they first signed up. And we basically, well, it's not me, it's some clever mathematicians, look at the difference between those two groups. So it is just questionnaires. But Marie, I mean, I haven't completed the questionnaires. Marie knows exactly what they're like.
Yeah, so you do the questionnaires whether you are in the actual programme or if you're in the control arm, and they're the same questionnaires. So they're very easy to use. The technology behind them was wonderful, because, that's one of the things a lot of foster carers maybe struggle with. We've got lots of paperwork to fill in and questionnaires to complete, but they were so easy, and you could. So you pick your challenge. So what's your challenge that you're facing with this child who you're focusing on at the minute? And then you rate it yourself. Is it high on the scale, or is it kind of medium? Where am I on it? Then again, you do it in 4 months. So you've had the training or you haven't, and you're seeing. So is the usual support I'm getting helping, or is it not? Is it staying the same? Is it getting worse, or is it getting better? And then at 8 months again, you measure it again, and then again at the end at 12. So the both arms of the research are really important. And I think when I do a lot of coffee mornings, and I hear people going, well, it really, really sounds good, and I want to attend the programme. So I just explain to them, if you use the tools and do a self-measure of it, and ask yourself the question, well, this isn't changing, or this is getting worse. So the support I'm getting from my local authority or whoever, it isn't helping. And you just use it to kind of measure that. I need to ask for a little bit more support with this, because it's not happening. And they are so easy. You can put them away. You can take 45 minutes to an hour doing them, but you can stop them at any time, and you don't lose your data. That is just most important. It picks it. You can go back a week later and you pick it back up, and it's all still there, and you just carry on and roll on. But I always suggest to people, when you're doing them, don't just tick the boxes. Really, really think about it and use it for your own self-measure of where you're at, and is it improving or not.
Thank you. I'm intrigued, because I'm not. When I did my degree, my research aspect of all of my units, my research one was the worst. Got very disappointed with my mark, but I deserved no less, not more. And I was wondering, in terms of you've got a group of people who are not having any sort of intervention versus a set of people who are having this intervention. That seems like such a gulf in between. In some ways, you're getting a comparison between absolutely zero and something. And even the something because I was thinking, well, I know that I do a bit of foster care training, and one of the things that the feedback is, oh, people just listen to me. That, you know, people just like being listened to, and people find that incredibly affirming and supportive, and they come away going, oh, that training was amazing. You go, all I did was listen to you. So how do you actually measure the models, the kind of the models of intervention, the specific kind of elements of the training itself? Maybe I'm asking questions that I don't really know what I'm talking about, but
yeah, 100%.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it does make sense. I mean, in terms of the kind of, I just really felt listened to, and that's what I got rather than the training itself. That's why we do those long-term questionnaires. That's why people are filling in a questionnaire a year after they signed up, because if it is just a case of, it made me feel really good, then you wouldn't see people still feeling good from that 8 months later.
That will ebb.
But yeah. I mean, there are lots of people working on this study. It's a massive team. And so, for example, we have a team that work on evaluating the process of the study. And they look at kind of what is it specifically that is making the program work well. I'm not in that team, so I'm definitely not an expert on what they do, but we do have people that are dedicated to that. And they look at things like, for example, what are the variations in the kind of control support, in the usual support that people get, because we all know that in some cases it can be a bit of a postcode lottery, and the support you get certainly might vary between local authorities. So they kind of take all that into consideration. And we have, as Marie said, you know, a foster carer and a social worker delivers the program. And then we have a team of people who support them doing that and kind of make sure that they're doing that on model. So we know that we're also assessing, quality assurance. Yeah. So there's all sorts of things that are being assessed. And the main thing we're looking at is, does it make a difference for carers and their children in the long term? But they're also kind of looking at, how does that work?
Because it's a fascinating area, because we actually I've been slightly confused about the emails that have been coming from yourselves as we were arranging it, because there's another group of people who are looking at studying DDP. I can never remember what the letters stand work for.
Dyadic developmental something, isn't it? I think.
Well, I can't believe we don't know that. We're having a moment.
It is dyadic. I know it is.
I know it is, but I can't remember what the P's for. You go in.
I'm going to Google. I'm on
AI. But it's really interesting that their studies not particularly comparable, but they're looking at DDP. You're looking at this specific model, the reflective fostering program, and it's really interesting to think that actually we don't have a lot of evidence for some of the things that we just do. And, you know, is there evidence for any sort of training or any sort of program?
And I think
is that a question you can answer? I don't know.
This is one of the things that the study is. Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of the unique things about the study. It is one of the biggest studies we have, and one of the things that's challenging in research is that we want to know all the answers straight away, right? And if you bring out a new training program, you want to know immediately, does it work? But actually it takes time to see, does things have a long-term effect? And you have to get loads of people involved to make sure that it's not just working for a couple of people, but that it's working kind of more broadly. And so you're right in a way that in fostering, there can be a tendency, in children's social care in general, there can be a tendency for us to say, here's a program, and we think it's good because people told us they felt good once they'd done it, which is great. That's fantastic if you're going on a program and it's making you feel good. But that's why we're kind of taking this really long-term, big approach to this. And it is something that more and more people are doing, but it's definitely something that needs to happen more, in my opinion, across fostering and adoption, is kind of looking at things really rigorously, and kind of diving into the evidence. And I think it kind of can feel a little bit uncomfortable when things are so relational, and kind of the way that we work in fostering is that it's all about building relationships with children, and everyone's circumstances are so unique, and we're also aware of that. To take things into a research setting and kind of say, is this better than this, or reduce it down to numbers, can feel a little bit weird. But I think you need both of those things, don't you? You need to have how people are feeling, but also having kind of rigorous evidence, I think, is really important, so that we know that we're kind of giving foster carers the best support that we can, because that's what it's all about, really. I mean, we would love the reflective fostering study to be something that everyone can access, but if it's not the best training, then that shouldn't be the case, because really foster carers deserve the best training they can get. And so what we're trying to do is see, is this something that is going to be beneficial? If it's not, how can we change it to make it beneficial? How can we make sure that we're supporting carers in the best way we can?
Yeah. There's two definitions for DDP. One is delivered duty paid. Right. That's
right. Yeah. I think that's the one.
I think the one that we're looking for is dyadic developmental psychotherapy. So there you go. I can never remember what the P is, because I can never remember if it's psychology or psychotherapy. But there you go. Dyadic developmental psychotherapy. Yeah. And I was just going to say there, Rachel, because you mentioned this a couple of times. I think at the moment, specifically as well, there's such a number of foster carers actually turning their back on being carers as well. And with the cost of living crisis, there's been cuts to kind of support and services and stuff like that. I mean, stuff like this surely can kind of, I'm not saying replace what's been taken away, but it can make them, it could actually make foster carers feel more appreciated in some way, because they're actually getting a different level of support and a newer kind of style of support, rather than just the standard,
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So
that was just my reflections. Just so
get you with your fancy social work words.
I was thinking about Sarah Foster Wiki Wah, because we've had her on a couple of times, haven't we? And that's something that she's really campaigning about in the minute is kind of the support that's disappearing from the system, and the number of carers that are kind of turning back. So I think it's a really important part of the kind of development in the future of for foster carers, really. That's kind of.
And I guess the flip side of that as well is if services are being cut left, right, and centre, and so the amount of kind of resource that local authorities and independent agencies have to put into training and supporting foster carers is reducing as well. So when they do support, they want to make sure that that's really good support and that there's evidence that is going to work as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because I think it's a really complicated dynamic, isn't working out what carers need, because there's this element of there's stuff that you need to teach people, train people on, but actually that's often just facts. Like you were saying, Marie, it's just like things.
And we get
stuff.
that. We get all the reasoning behind why the children behave the way they do, or the impact that, because we suffer secondary trauma. We definitely do. You live the trauma with the child you're looking after, and I just felt this takes you right back to your own childhood and your own upbringing, and the methods that your parents may have used with you to bring you up and to parent you. And it kind of makes you see that everybody is different and why that might not work for this particular child. I've got 3 children and I'd use different methods of parenting for each one, because not one fits all. And you have to remember that and go back to that. And I think doing the reflective fostering, taking me right back to that. And, as I said, there's lots of other tools. I'm not going to talk about all them today, because you learn on the 10 weeks, you get a new tool every week, and it's brilliant. And you can pull on each one, but also there's a tool for yourself. And that's kind of, it's prevented a lot of burnout, I would say. And I look after children in permanency. So I've got a 20-year-old who's been with me for 13 years. I've got a 15-year-old and a 4-year-old. Obviously, I have to parent them all very differently. And I get a lot of burnout, but I get away and I know when it's time now. And I'm quite a calm person. Foster carers are normally quite calm people, and, we're in it because, as you say, that's who we are. But this really helped, and it did.
Can I ask a slightly off-point question, but why did you become a foster carer?
Well, to be honest, my husband became a foster carer first, and we took on two boys. We had 4 daughters ourselves. They all got to 22, 23, 20, left home, went off, and we were like, ooh. I had a job that was quite hectic. I had a career in a job. I was travelling about everywhere. So he took on 2 boys, and I obviously done a lot of the work along that way. And then as we got older, after about 10 years, well, let's have a look at, maybe taking on. I've had a lot. I've had, like, I could probably say 44 children along the way, because I've took on lots of emergencies. And it just felt natural, really just felt natural. Because we thought we've offered our children what we've been grown up into adults, give them a good life. We felt we're quite good at this, they're all independent, they're all doing really well. We'd always thought about fostering when we were even younger, but we were too busy with careers and bringing our own children up. So, yeah, it just felt right at the right time, and we did. And then when I looked at retiring more, I thought, well, yeah, we've got a big house, we'll take on a couple more children, and they just happened to me.
Do you think that this, the reflective fostering program, do you think that's kind of given you something that means your fostering career, if you can use those words, is it give it longevity? I'd say and giving it sort of stability. It's given
stability, because we have, like I say, we have hectic moments, and you focus on one child. You have to choose one child to focus on. So I did, and that was because of being quite explosive, is the way I'd say it at times. And the way the tools and the skills that I took away from that, I think I probably already possessed them in a way. But then I've learned to utilise them and use them when I need to. But without saying to the child, now this is mindfulness and this is mentalising and this is being very self-reflective. I've passed on those skills to the child, who now doesn't understand that I picked this up from a training session, and but I've taught her how to self-reflect, I've taught her how to mentalise, taught her how to understand the situation and walk away. And we come back when we're both a bit more receptive to talk about what's been happening, and we get so much. We move on. It was actually, I said it was June 22, and I did it was June 21. Everything's running smoothly. We still have our moments, but we go back in and we use these tools and we go back, and it just seems to work. So yeah, it's offered stability, and I think it's helped with less burnout for me.
I'd be interested to know whether your reflections on whether this would be something that could be then transferred to different communities. Thinking about you're a foster carer, but then thinking about maybe connected family members, kinship carers, and then maybe adoptive parents, and then maybe children of special educational needs, children with complex. Well,
definitely. As I say, I do some mentoring and I work on some other projects called LIFT, Lancashire Intervention for Fostering Teams, and that I work with birth families who are like maybe grandparents who are doing special guardianships. I work with adoptive families and foster carers who are at a critical point, and I just talk to them about a lot about therapeutic parenting. We all kind of know that one, and PACE, but then I've brought in this element of it now to self-help the actual caregiver. And I get a lot of feedback from that to say that that's been really useful. That's really helped.
It's interesting that you mentioned about connected carers, Al, because we call it reflective fostering, but within that we include mainstream foster carers and also kinship foster carers. So the study is for kinship foster carers as well as mainstream foster carers.
All right, cool.
Thanks for that, Maria. It just sounds like it really helped you and the young people that you have living with you.
In fact, I've said this before. When I went to the celebration day and I did a presentation for the reflective fostering, and I use these skills on my husband. I use them on my daughters. Yeah. I use them on my 4 daughters. My 4 daughters now have produced me 7 grandchildren, so I can actually give some of this to them as well. So it is wider. It can be used wider, but for the reflective fostering for foster carers and kinship carers, connected carers, it's quite a good set of tools to have.
Sounds it. And of course, as the world changes, we have to put, whether you've got a foster care, a birth parent, whatever your setup, really, we all have to parent differently these days because each person is different, and we now recognise that, I guess, and develop it. Excuse me. So, Rachel, Sell it. Sell what it is.
Well, I mean, if it hasn't come across, we think this is a fantastic program. We think it's a fantastic opportunity for carers. And there are still spaces to join the program. So if you like what you hear, then do get in touch. We are running another program in September, and sign up for that is open. So I don't know how, maybe we can put a link in the description for the podcast or something for how people can get in touch.
Yep.
Yes, we will.
So the study is open to anyone who is a kinship foster carer or a mainstream foster carer who is caring for a child between the ages of 4 and 13. So there is a little bit of restriction there. But otherwise, anyone is welcome to get in touch. We'll send you more information. And most of the groups are running online, so it doesn't matter where you are in the UK, you're very welcome to join in. Please do sign up.
Just so we'll put all that, but can I just go back to was it the intention for it all to be online, or was that kind of something that just happened?
Yeah, it wasn't.
I
mean, the plan wasn't for it to be online at all, and we had to take. So I said we were going to start in 2020. We started in 2021, and that year was spent trying to work out how we deliver it online, because it was designed for face to face. So even things like breakout groups and it was a bit crazy, but in a way, it's been really good, because actually it's opened it up to everyone. And just in terms of like travel costs and timing, I mean, it's 2.5, 3 hours, right? So if it's online, that's all it takes. But if you've got to drive for 45 minutes away. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a blessing in disguise, really, I think, it being online.
So can you tell me a bit about Include and where it fits within the program and the study?
Yeah, definitely. So Include came in about a year and a half after the study had started. And the reason why is that we were looking at the data of the people who were involved and some of their characteristics. And we noticed that certain kind of groups of people are more likely to take part in the study than others. So, for example, we have a lot more women in the study than men. And we have a lot more mainstream carers than we do kinship carers. And so Include is basically about exploring why this is the case. And like, is there something that the study team have been doing that's preventing kind of people wanting to get involved? So we've spent the last year meeting with lots of different foster carers and running surveys and reading lots of literature to basically understand how we can make research in fostering more inclusive of people who might typically be underserved or typically be kind of less forthcoming in taking part in research, who wouldn't naturally come forward. And so we've made a few changes to the study because of Include as well. So, for example, the Anna Freud Centre, if people sign up to take part in the study through Anna Freud, we offer bespoke groups, because a lot of some of the male participants, for example, said, I would have maybe felt comfortable in a male-only space. So we now offer kind of male-only programs. Same with kinship carers. So we offer kinship carer-only programs, if that's something they'd like. And also programs specific for people from South Asian heritage or ethnic minorities. And this has all kind of come through a process of hearing people and saying, how can we make this research more inclusive for you? Because I think if we're going to say, I mean, ultimately the goal of this is that we say reflective fostering is great and we want people to roll it out. But if we're not including everyone in the study and we're not hearing what it's like for everyone, how can we say that? If the study's only got women in it, then we can't say this program is great for men and women. So that's kind of where Include came from.
Oh.
There's lots to think about there. And do you have, I mean, I'm trying to think of the data that we have about foster carers. And so we do have quite a lot. I mean, the data set that's collected in terms of the actual fostering cohort, who's in there, we've got a good idea of who's in it, haven't we? So are you just looking to get a representation of across that, a cross-section across that? So including gender, sexuality?
Yeah, so we really like the reflective fostering study to be representative of the national population across the UK, but also because we do have more carers from certain kind of geographic regions than others, we're also looking at local data. So we look at, for example, Lancashire, how many male carers are there in Lancashire, how many kinship carers are there in Lancashire? So we're looking at kind of the national and the local. And we really just want to be representative of the population. That's the aim.
And yeah, so I mean, there are specific fostering organisations out there in terms of there's My Foster Family, who. So have you reached out to them? I mean, we're speaking of them and they're not here.
We've got a couple of people from My Foster Family in our Include advisory group, actually. So it's funny you should mention them. But yeah, we've been working meeting with people from across the fostering sector. So meeting with some specific agencies, for example, kinship specific agencies, Black carer specific agencies, and asking for their input. So they've been really valuable in kind of telling us how we might make the research more inclusive and more accessible. But talking to agencies is fantastic. Most of our learning has come from speaking to carers themselves. So getting groups of male carers together. And this whole project has been, I'm a researcher by background, but we've got 2 guys on the team who are just foster carers by training, and they haven't had any research experience before, who've been helping us with the project. So the whole point is, how can we be more inclusive? How can we be more accessible? They've been running the male groups, for example, because they're men. So we've tried to build that in all the way through.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
And I think and I was going to say, I think it's interesting because I'm just sitting here thinking about, because I think about this a lot over the years since being an adoptive parent. And very early days, there was very few kind of other same-sex couples who adopted, and I always felt that, for me, as in me personally, that actually being in a diverse group rather than a specific group, if that makes sense. So I don't get me wrong, I chat to other same-sex couples and gay dads, and that are within my cohort. But actually, for me, I prefer to be in just a kind of more generic group, if that makes sense. But actually, a lot of people don't, and it's really. So you've really kind of got my thinking going on that as well. So it's an interesting thing for you to include, which is probably why you called it Include. Yeah. Loving your work there.
Yeah.
Boom.
But I think you hit the nail on the head, Scott, when you said, for me, I prefer to be, because I think that's what it's about. If we just take a broad stroke approach and we say, this is how men like it, or this is how people from South Asian cultures like it, then that's not right. And Include is about kind of understanding the nuance and seeing how we can adapt reflective fostering to meet different needs.
I mean, this is a really fascinating conversation because I do a lot of work in terms of challenging violent aggressive behaviour. That's where a lot of my training and kind of expertise is. But just again and again and again, just seeing men not accessing that space where people want to talk about behaviour, and I've been sort of commissioned to run a support group for in a different country. That's the wonder of Zoom for you, but actually, but across, and maybe it reflects the men, but actually, just still really difficult to get men in a room and totally committed to the work, but just not particularly comfortable with that, sitting around talking about it. And that's just really peculiar. And I'm scratching my head thinking, how do we help men? So it's interesting that it's not just me, it's not personal, that people don't want to be in rooms with me. But that might be an aspect of it, I think.
Well, you say that.
Awkward conversation. I've been reading through some of the literature, and I'm conscious that you've said you've had 450 people through the course. There's a deadline, isn't there, as well? So we're not faffing around for people to sign up. Is that right?
So the program, the next wave is our final wave. So the course that starts in September will be the last one that is part of the study. If people are interested, we'd love to hear from them in June, and then by July we want people to be signed up. There is a little bit of wiggle room, but we know that it's the summer holidays and everyone's priorities change. So kind of June to mid-July is when we're asking people to contact.
Yeah. So I guess Marie, just coming to you in terms of a final word about this. What would you say if any foster care or kinship foster care is listening and they were kind of, that sounds interesting, but
I think just don't be apprehensive of the time, because I think that's the biggest kind of killer, if you like, for people to say, I can't commit to that. It's relaxing, you get something from it. The time goes very quickly. I started to. You get all the dates. You know when they're coming. You know, so it's on a set day each week. Make that your time, because it is your time, and you'll get so much from it. Just go for it. Give it a go. If you can't attend all the sessions, that's not a problem. You know, things happen, and you can't. You get all the literature emailed to you, so there's no homework, none at all. You just live your life and practice what you've learned, and it works. And just give it a go, really. If, as I said earlier, if this training had been around years ago when I first went into fostering, and years later, I probably wouldn't have made the mistakes I've made. Handled situations differently and kept things running more calm without all of the trauma that it caused myself, really, and the burnout. So give it a go.
That's excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And I am slightly intrigued. I'm trying to work out a way I can get myself on, but I'm not.
You could deliver it. Facilitate, yeah.
I could deliver it, couldn't I? Just asking for a friend, Rachael. Just someone I know. Are you looking for facilitators or trainers?
At the moment, no. Our facilitator roles are closed. But
no, yes. She spent an hour with us. She's like, that's not no way. That's not way.
We have fantastic facilitators, but they're in the process of being trained up at the moment. So I think you might have missed the boat with that one now.
All right.
Sorry. I feel like I've really let you down there.
You have.
The tape for this recording might get lost somewhere between now and Saturday after that. I don't know.
What recording? Well, silly boy. Well, thank you so much for your time. It has been really interesting, and it's kind of given me a lot of food for thought in terms of actually how do we prepare. How do we help people along this journey, really? So I wish you well. And maybe when you've got the results, when will you have the results?
That is a really good question. It will take a little bit of time because we need the people who do the program in September. Obviously, they'll complete their questionnaires, their final questionnaires a year from now. And then we have to look at the data. But if you're going to invite us back, then it's a definite yes from me and Marie. We'd love to.
Yeah, well,
if we're both still alive, you're very welcome. And even if it's just one of us, you can still come back.
Yeah, it might just be 2 AI bots, actually, at the rate we're going.
I will not.
Well, thank you so much, and we wish you well.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
And she'll be.